Former Chief of yesterday.
It is today's Thursday. It's Thursday. That's right. It's Thursday, the 24th of June, 2021. This is your daily Good Morning Comrade. How are we doing today? How we doing? Got a new little Armorino for the microphone. Some upgrades in here. Hey, what's up, Gary? How's it going, bud? How are you? It's always nice to see you. We got a couple stories today to get to. I'm just sending out the tweet saying that we're live. Kim Kelly, friend of the program, she has been doing some really good work for really covering the mine workers situation. Probably better than anybody else other than the Valley Labor Report, who are like literally doing strike support out there all the time. There was a great video yesterday. Well, it was from earlier in the month, but our friend Jacob from Valley Labor Report was doing some support for the striking workers out there. Let me pull the video up. Let me pull it up. God, I just hate seeing Kirsten Sinema's face. Scrolling. Something like this. Okay, wait, hold up a second. Here is a great video that was put out by More Perfect Union. Actually, it's a little bit different. That's not the one I was saying, but this is better because it's more recent. Hey, good morning, Counting Amberjacks. How are you today? But this video here, actually is from Tuesday, and it's too loud. It is still too loud. I turned it all the way down. All right, I'll turn it off. But yeah, Tuesday, this was taken. Striking Alabama mine workers are in New York City today, protesting outside the offices of three major Wall Street investors in Warrior Met Coal. They'll be joined by Stuart Applebaum and Sarah Nelson. Stuart Applebaum is the president of RWDSU, Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Workers Union. And Sarah Nelson is the president of the Flight Attendants Union, AFA CWA. Both very high profile union leaders. But here are the mine workers who showed up.
No contract! No code! No contract! No code! UFWA! 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 No contract! No code! No contract! No code! UFWA! UFWA!
Good stuff. Good stuff. Here's Kim Kelly. She showed up on Democracy Now! Yesterday to talk about some of this stuff that was happening.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the quarantine report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. More than 1,000 coal miners are now in the third month of their strike in the so-called right-to-work state of Alabama. The struggle is attracting national attention not long after workers in Bessemer, Alabama, tried to organize a union at their Amazon warehouse. About 30 miles from Bessemer, miners at Warrior Met Coal in Brookwood walked off the job April 1st after their union, United Mine Workers of America, called the first strike to hit the state's coal mining industry in 4 decades. Workers are fighting for improvements to wages and benefits after they agreed to drastic cutbacks in 2016 when Warrior Met Coal took control of the mines after the previous company went bankrupt. This is part of a report by independent labor journalist Kim Kelly about the demands of the...
And Kim's been doing great coverage on this. Just fantastic. She's been there since the beginning of this. This has been going on for about 8 weeks now. And yeah, shout out to her. Shout out to Jacob and David and Adam over at the Valley Labor Report as well.
Miners and their union. This was done for the Real News Network.
One of their key demands concerned their health care plans. Under a prior contract, when the mines were still controlled by Jim Walter Resources, the company had covered 100% of the miners' medical costs. But after they went bankrupt in 2015 and Warrior Met bought the mines, that changed.
They threatened to take away all the retirees' pensions and retirement. And they kind of forced the guys into taking a contract, basically saying, if you don't accept this, then you're going to lose everything. We'll just close. So they took a huge cut in pay, and they cut their insurance and their benefits. Used to, we had almost 100% coverage for insurance. And now it's thousands of dollars, even to meet your deductible.
That last voice was Hayden Wright, president of the local chapter of the United Mine Workers of America. Last month, nearly a dozen miners were arrested trying to shut down the mine and stop non-unionized workers from getting in and out. Kim Kelly documented the standoff in this report for More Perfect Union.
Miners at the Warrior Met Coal in Tuscaloosa County have been on strike. The union and the company still trying to agree on a contract.
The union says the miners helped get the company out of bankruptcy over the past 5 years, but have never received fair compensation for their efforts.
You took cutting pay, you took cutting your days, cutting safety, health and safety, cutting your benefits. Now the company is getting back on their feet, making all kinds of money, and they don't want to share that same progress with us.
Again, yeah, they're making record profits. We've talked about this quite a bit on the show. The Warrior Met facility is making record profits after essentially forcing the workers in those mines to take huge pay cuts. And since those record profits have been coming in, instead of paying the workers, they've been giving bonuses to executives and essentially expecting the workers to take more pay cuts or, not significant enough increases to put them back to where they were before the them back before the sort of bankruptcy. Good morning, Penelope. How are you this morning? Good morning. Enjoying the second cool day in between heat waves in Connecticut. Don't know how you guys do it. Have a great day. It's not easy. Just kind of keep cool, come inside, go swimming where you can, and get a snowball is kind of part of the answer too.
Ain't got no soul. William Cole ain't got no soul. William Cole ain't got no soul. William Cole ain't got no soul.
So
we want the world to know that we want a fair and just contract, and we got to do whatever we got to do to make that happen. And we don't feel like we're breaking the law when this company is trying to destroy our people and their families from their livelihood.
I'll die for my family, and I'll do whatever it takes for this union right here.
This is personal. It's personal.
This comes as the United Mine Workers of America has documented at least 3 separate incidents of cars driving into the workers on the picket lines during their strike.
Yep.
Today, a group of striking mine workers have traveled from Alabama to New York to protest the Wall Street hedge funds backing Warrior Met, including BlackRock Fund Advisors, SSGA Funds Management, and Renaissance Technologies. For more, we're joined by Kim Kelly. She's an independent labor journalist and organizer. Her series for The Real News is titled Battleground Brookwood. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Kim. It's great to have you with us. So why don't you give us further background on this strike and exactly what the miner workers are doing in New York today?
For sure. So these miners have been on strike since April 1st on unfair labor practices strike. They have been out for almost 3 months now. On April 8th, the local union leadership and the company, they came together with a tentative agreement that they presented to the membership. And the membership overwhelmingly voted that down and voted to stay out on strike. And now they've been out there on the picket lines every single day ever since. They haven't gotten very much outside media attention. They've gotten a lot of local support and support from within the labor movement. And today, a group of the miners and UMWA officials, as well as some international labor leaders, Sarah Nelson from AFA and Stuart Applebaum from RWSU, are out here protesting, picketing in front of these venture capital investors' offices, because these are the companies that fund Warrior Met and allow Warrior Met to pay their executives millions of dollars a year.
So that's why they're in New York, because the money for the owners essentially of the Warrior Met mining operation, the mining company, is basically
in front
just a bunch
as well.
Basically just a bunch of Wall Street firms that they don't give a shit about the workers. They're not connected to the situation on the ground at all. They just want to see the graph on the line on their graph go up. That's all they give a shit about.
As well as some international labor leaders, Sarah Nelson from AFA and Stuart Applebaum from RWSU, are out here protesting, picketing in front of these venture capital investors' offices, because these are the companies that fund Warrior Met and allow Warrior Met to pay their executives millions of dollars a year, while the miners, the workers themselves who are creating that value, are struggling to get by on sometimes as little as $22 an hour to spend 6 days a week, 12 hours a day underground in one of the deepest mines in North America, which also happens to be filled with methane gas.
And Kim Kelly, could you talk a little bit more about Warrior Met and what it's been able to take out in revenue and profits since it took over the mine?
Right. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but they have done very well for themselves. Their latest quarterly report, they did have a loss in this past quarter because of the pandemic and various factors within the industry, but they have made their money back. They are very robust. They're doing fine. And one of the key issues with this strike is that, back in 2016, when the miners signed on that dotted line and agreed to take this subpar contract, it was with the understanding that once this new company got on its feet and made its profits, that when it came time for the new contract, then the miners would see their fair share of those profits. And now that obviously has not happened. And that's one of the primary factors here, is that this company that has investors based on Wall Street, who is sending all of its product overseas and is exploiting the labor of these folks in rural Alabama, they are not coming to the bargaining table with anything meaningful.
And this is classic of what bosses do. They'll like say, "Oh, we need you to take a haircut now. We need you to take a break now. We want you to, right now we're in a crisis sort of situation. We really want it. We really need you to take less pay, get a worse contract, et cetera, et cetera." And then once that's done and you do what they tell you to do, and you bring back essentially save this company, save this mine, essentially, I mean, and the workers are the ones that did it. They're the ones that, one, made, took the pay cut so that the numbers would be right, and two, did literally all of the work to drive those profits, to drive those numbers up. And now the bosses want to come around and say, "Oh, actually, we don't really, we don't want you to have a better contract. We want you to have a shittier contract." It's classic. It's just a classic gotcha, that the boss does.
They're not bargaining in good faith. And as you mentioned earlier on in the report, there is actual, active hostility and violence that is happening as a result of the company's hostile approach towards these workers.
And also, given the climate today in the United States, with so much racial strife and racial division across the country, this strike is an example of interracial unity, isn't it? Could you talk about the workforce itself and its composition?
Yes, so the UMWA has been established in the state of Alabama since 1890, and throughout its tenure there, it has been one of historically the most interracial, racially integrated locals in the country. The UMWA as a whole, actually going back to its founding, has been much more integrated than some of the other major unions in this country. And in Brookwood and the Warrior Met mines, I think the workforce is about 20% Black. And obviously there are women, there are multiple genders involved. It's not just a bunch of white guys in hard hats, which is sort of the general media image of coal miners. But that's not who they are. That's not what they look like. And these folks are working together. And the fact that this is happening just a few miles outside of Bessemer, where we saw this other incredible organizing campaign, I think is very significant, because that part of Alabama,
it is really wild that Alabama is so hot right now. Like that there's so much so much energy and organizing happening there. It's actually very heartening to me. It makes me feel very excited that one of the things that we keep talking about in organizations like TSA, but also more broadly throughout the sort of broad left, is labor organizing, specifically in the South, because we've been so beaten down in terms of what is like essentially, like, in terms of the labor standards here are significantly lower, and the price of labor is so much cheaper that a lot of jobs will get farmed out from places in the Northeast, places in the far, in the West, formerly jobs that would be like auto industry jobs. They've been sort of farmed out to places like Brandon, Alabama. They have parts facilities out there at a much smaller scale, but it's a lot cheaper to run those facilities because the cost of labor is so much less, because there's a lot less union density. So it's almost like that's being used as leverage. I mean, it's not almost like, it's exactly what's happening. That sort of dynamic is being used as leveraged against more established areas. And so the only response that there is to organize workers in those places as well.
Labor movement has very deep roots, and it intertwines very closely with the civil rights movement and the struggle for Black liberation. So this is a much bigger story than just a few people that are upset about a contract. There's a lot of history here too.
I want to turn to a clip of Shane Olmstead, a striking mine worker in Alabama.
They had done cut our pay, cut our insurance, cut all the things out, and then they made millions, over the next 5 years because the coal market went from $86 a ton when we was asked to take pay cuts to $230, $240 a ton. And now they don't want to give anything back to their workers.
That was Shane Olmstead, a striking mine worker in Alabama. This is James Blankenship, a mine worker union representative, explaining the lingering effects of black lung.
I had an uncle that died from black lung. He could not literally chew a bite of food without having to stop to take oxygen. That's how bad his lungs were.
Yeah, I could not imagine what it's like to work in a coal mine like that. There was there was a really great fundraiser that our friends over at the Valley Labor Report helped put together for these workers. They raised $70,000, and we were like very lucky with myself, Robert, and Scott. Also, Kenzo was a part of it too. They had this fundraiser. A bunch of people from across like left media or whatever came together. We were part of this fundraiser. Filling in a little bit of time, trying to get people to give their money to this support these workers. And one of the times that one of the people that were a part of that program, it was on Friday night, was Max Alvarez, and he interviewed one of the workers from the Warrior Met facility and described like what it was like to go like down deep into the earth, essentially, like going into an elevator, like bullet train down for, I think he said something like 11 minutes, like crazy stuff. Like the fact that like you could very easily start fires down there. There's they just mentioned things like methane gas, and they basically, one of the workers that was out there, that goes down in this mine every day, just described a lot of this stuff, and it's really, really shocking that these people don't make, basically all of the money. Like the fact that these motherfuckers in suits, pushing papers and charting graphs or whatever the hell, like looking at the spreadsheets and say, well, we need that number to be lower and that number to be higher. Those are the ones that make the money, and not the people that actually do all of the stuff that generates that value. It's absolutely like ridiculous. And then also, we got to hear from the family, specifically the wife, and how she would just sort of, be thinking about how, this person, her husband would be out, every single day in these horrible conditions, and wondering if they would come back. It was really intense.
So if you could, Kim Kelly, talk about these people that you interviewed, this issue of black lung, and then how can supporters of the coal workers, supporting the fight for better wages, for better working conditions, also talk about a transition to a greener and overall safer economy, more sustainable for the world?
Right. So obviously a lot has changed since back in the day, this sort of stereotypical image of the coal miner with their pickaxe and their little headlight going down in these tiny tunnels. But a lot of the same risks are still there. These folks are dealing with massive machinery underground. There's ventilation issues. There's, this age-old terror of black lung is actually on the rise again in this country. A lot of that has to do with the fact that some of the mines in West Virginia and Kentucky, they're not union. And so the safety regulations are, there's no one keeping an eye on that. And the silica and quartz in that rock makes it much more difficult to get out of there without getting black lung. I think at this point, about 10% of veteran coal miners are dealing with this affliction. So it hasn't disappeared. There's still people struggling with this. And, when I was down there, I met this young man named Dalton, who was 22 years old. A couple weeks into his just starting at Warrior Met, he was crushed underground by two massive pieces of machinery, and now he's paralyzed from the waist down. Like, these are the stories that I'm hearing. These are the horrible dangers and risks that people are dealing with just to go down there and to make their money and to take care of their families. It's a job that a lot of folks are very proud of and feel very deeply about. I've met third and fourth generation miners down there, but I also have found that people are cognizant of the fact that, coal and fossil fuels in general are not exactly great for the environment. I don't think there's any illusions there. And I think that folks would like to see a greener, cleaner, healthier environment for everyone. But the thing that, that speaks to these folks who are in these small rural coal mining communities is this fear that they'll be left behind.
Yes, 100%. Like that's one of the key points, just to kind of like slide onto a different, well, I mean, this is sort of going into where Kim's going, but one of the big issues, and I remember this happened probably about 2 or 3 years ago when the AFL-CIO sort of like in response to the Green New Deal said that they couldn't support it. And I think they were being potentially a little bit thick from the perspective of they, very often our mainstream unions are in line with the sort of Democratic Party in a lot, especially at the national level. Some of the leaders get Washington brain, all that other stuff, but there is some truth into it. So there was this paper that was released by I can't remember what part of it, but it was essentially by the AFL-CIO saying why they couldn't support the Green New Deal, and a large part of that had to do with the part of it called the just transition of jobs. And like there was this, the argument that they made was that there's like very little articulation towards like in terms of like what specifically is going to happen with that, or at least it was the case at the time. And like even if they're doing that in bad faith or whatever, which I mean, I don't know. But even if that's happening, like that is a huge concern, specifically for people in the energy industry, in the coal mining industry. There's a lot of people here in Louisiana that live on oil, that work on oil rigs, and that's how they make their money. And if those jobs just suddenly disappear, what's going to happen to those folks? And that's something that really needs to be seriously addressed and seriously, like, clearly articulated, and there needs to be concrete sort of steps that are very, very clear in the direction of making sure that these people don't get totally fucked. Like I get that, you know what I mean?
Environment for everyone. But the thing that,
look at this fucking like hot dog motherfucker cop, like just coming to bust up these workers.
That speaks to these folks who are in these small rural coal mining communities is this fear that they'll be left behind. I think that was a big feature in the statement that recently came out from UMWA President Cecil Roberts, who's talking about how the union would be willing to support Biden's green energy initiatives as long as there's actually funding and training set aside to create good paying union jobs for these folks so that there is an actual transition and that they're not just being left to fend for themselves.
You just don't want to give these folks any job. You want to give them good paying union jobs. You want to replace them with you don't want to give them a worse job even. They don't need to be in a worse position because we are trying to essentially make a planet that will be inhabitable in 20, 50, 100 years. Like they should not be having to pay the price. There needs to be investments in those fucking people and good jobs for them to have. 100%. Meal Tomb 6. Got him.
I think, and also there is this little wrinkle in this particular story, because even if we went to green energy, a fully green economy tomorrow, these folks would still be down there digging out this coal because they dig out metallurgical coal, which is used to make coke, which is used to make steel. And the vast majority, if not all, of their product that they create is sent overseas to industrializing nations who are hungry for coal. And so they're in kind of a different sector of all of this.
Kim, we only have about 30 seconds left, but I just wanted to ask you the role of the police and the state troopers during the strike? I understand that the mines are isolated, the entrances, and they're not the traditional picket lines that are occurring.
Yes, they're isolated. There's 12 smaller groups that are kind of scattered around this massive area, and there's a police presence. The company has hired private armed security, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem like anybody is really that concerned with the safety of these miners, as we've seen with these particular attacks. So they really need all the help and support they can get from those outside of that situation, which people can do by donating to their strike fund and their strike pantry, which the Women's Auxiliary has been building up over the past couple months.
And finally, 10 seconds, what they're demanding of BlackRock today.
They want them to listen, to pay attention, and to see them. They want them to see the people that they're exploiting and come to the bargaining table with a decent contract, to do the right thing, and to treat them with respect.
Kim Kelly, independent labor journalist for More Perfect Union, Means TV, and The Real News, where her series is titled Battleground Brookwood. We'll link to it. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Produced with Renee Feltz, Mike Berti, Nick Guster.
Yeah. So here's some of the reporting from the article that was mentioned, the one that the true price of coal. So let's take a look at that for a few minutes. Come on now.
Miners at Warrior Met Coal in Brookwood, Alabama went on strike, citing unfair labor practices and seeking to win a better union contract than the one they've been laboring under for the past 5 years.
We're on an unfair labor practice strike against Warrior Met Coal. And I don't know about everybody else, but I'm tired of the way they treat our people. I'm tired of the contract we've got.
One of their key demands concerned their health care plans. Under a prior contract, when the mines were still controlled by Jim Walter Resources, the company had covered 100% of the miners' medical costs. But after they went bankrupt in 2015 and Warrior Met bought the mines, that changed.
They threatened to take away all the retirees' pensions and retirement. And they kind of forced the guys into taking a contract, basically saying, if you don't accept this, then you're going to lose everything. We'll just close. So they took a huge cut in pay, and they cut their insurance and their benefits. Used to, we had almost 100% coverage for insurance. And now it's thousands of dollars, even to meet your deductible. And then 80-20 insurance, which is nowhere near what we had.
Now the miners themselves are being forced to shoulder
not just pay cuts, but also cuts in insurance. She mentioned deductibles. Also, sweet shirt, the coal miner's wife life with those big glasses. That's incredible.
Which is nowhere near what we had.
Now the miners themselves are being forced to shoulder that financial burden, as well as the physical risks they take on every time they go down into the darkness.
Well, these guys go underground, you know, they get on a cage and they go down 2,200 feet, and there's rock above their head, and there's coal dust, methane, everything about the job is dangerous. They work hard every day. They come out dirty. When they go home, you know, they just want to spend time with their family, and that's what we're asking for in this contract.
Coal mining has always been a dirty, dangerous job, but for centuries, people have done it anyway, to keep their bills paid and the lights on, as well as to keep the country's economy humming.
Could you imagine working like with just tons of earth surrounding you and sloshing through like a bunch of water? Like, I don't know. That just seems very, very difficult. And then, I mean, if you remember just a few minutes ago when Kim was talking to Amy Goodman, 22-year-old kid just got crushed by a piece of equipment, paralyzed for the rest of his life. That can happen in any time. Like, Jesus.
At its peak in the early 20th century, the industry employed nearly 1 million people. Now, 100 years later, coal is an industry in transition, and the number of coal mining jobs in the U.S. has plummeted to 44,000, half of what it was a decade ago. There are a number of factors behind that decline, from advances in mechanization that streamline production and cut jobs, to competition from overseas, to the growing shift towards renewable energy.
When I started in 76, the equipment, a lot of it was hydraulics, a lot of electrical with contactors and stuff to that effect. And then it started going into more computerized equipment. And nowadays everything you hook, it's like your car. You hook a computer up to it and troubleshoot it. It's come a long way. A lot bigger. Equipment's a whole lot bigger than it used to be. A lot more complicated as far as computer wise. Before, it's hard to describe, but you go into a panel to work on it, there's thousands of wires. Now you just got circuits. It's so much different.
But while the future of coal is still in question, some things about the industry have barely changed. Coal mining remains one of the most dangerous professions in the world. Between the heavy machinery involved, the threat of a poorly bolted roof collapsing, the lack of light and oxygen underground, the high levels of methane gas and other chemicals in the deepest mines, poor management leading to a lack of safety, and the threat of coal dust in the air, there are many ways in which coal miners might become badly injured on the job, or even worse, lose their lives. In 2001, a cave-in at the mine that is now owned by Warrior Met caused a release of methane gas that sparked 2 massive explosions. 13 miners were killed in the blast.
You have constant danger of rock falls in the mines, so that's always a concern. They try to have a roof bolting process to secure the roof, but there's not.
No oxygen, can't breathe. Yeah, that's not good. The methane gas, and then also like fucking explosions.
Always areas where roof bolting is done, so that's an issue. A lot of times people get crushed in equipment in some capacity, and so whether that's there's mobile equipment moving around underground, and maybe someone doesn't get seen, they get backed into, and there's just other catastrophic accidents we've had with people. Pulling stuff with steel cables underground, steel cables under a lot of tension, and can break all of a sudden. And then you've got, can have a cable that can literally cut people in two, flying to the mine. And those are the kind of concerns, as well.
People don't realize what we go through. We got a young man that's here tonight. His name is Dalton Lewis. Dalton came down here from Kentucky. After he got down here, he was sitting on the end of the track waiting on his ride out. The boss come flying in on a man bus. The men was telling him to slow down. The boss lost control of that man bus, hit another man bus, flipped Dalton out of the man bus that was at the end of the track. Dalton's paralyzed.
So wait, the boss caused it directly to happen? Holy shit. Let me hear this again.
The boss lost control of that man bus, hit another man bus, flipped Dalton out of the man bus that was at the end of the track. Dalton's paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh my God.
Young man. Shouldn't have happened.
Dalton Lewis grew up in a coal mining family in Harlan County, Kentucky, and got his first mining job there when he was 19. He and his dad, Chris, were both involved in the Black Jewel mine blockade that made headlines in 2019.
Oh, yeah, Black Jewel was well, it was criminal, really. What happened, that guy, he took it, he gave you the last check, and then they told you not to come to work. Yeah, I went to work one day, and they told us we're filing bankruptcy to come back tomorrow. Yeah, and then
You can't,
Okay.
like I said, they gave you your last check, then they clawed it out of the bank.
Yeah,
so you know.
Yeah, they put the last check in the bank and pulled it back, and everybody that worked for them, it was direct deposit. So everybody was in the red at the bank, and there was people getting arrested over child support that was supposed to be cut out of their check that he wasn't paying, and it was unreal. It was just criminal. It was criminal.
And what did you guys do about it?
Oh well, we stopped his train,
Oh, yeah.
and it's funny how 5 guys could stick together and stop a train. And that's what we done. And the protest took off. It was nationwide.
Yeah, it was wild.
We had people from California ordering pizza and having it delivered. Coke. There was a Coke truck pulled up on the side of the road and unloaded Coke and wheeled up there and donated. It was wild.
Yeah.
How long did the blockade last?
Oh Lord, it was what, 3 months?
Yeah, it's about 3 months.
About 3 months.
When Dalton decided to pack up and look for work in the Alabama mines later that year, his dad came along too. They both ended up working at Warrior Met.
Down here about a month, and that's when he got hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
I came down August 15th when I got the job, and I got hurt September 4th.
Was that 2019 or 2020?
2019.
He was on a different section than I was.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for third shift to get there, and the boss came in too fast, fell asleep or something. Which, that Warrior Met, they won't work you to death.
Yeah.
I mean, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, And he hit the man bus. Dalton fell out. Then he caught Dalton between the man bus and the man bus again. That's right. That's right.
Respiratory problems and environmental diseases are also a common concern among people who work down in these mines for a living, including pneumoconiosis, better known as black lung. Though it may be seen as an antiquated disease that plagued workers in a bygone era, black lung remains a very real problem.
Black lung sounds like it should be like locked away in the 19th century, right? Like that shouldn't be a thing that exists anymore. What it does.
And impacts 10% of veteran coal miners in the U.S.
Oh, I mean, they have to have covered him. I mean, like especially if the boss is directly responsible, like that guy, he should be like essentially compensated by Warrior Met for the rest of his life. I mean, if not, that's absolutely criminal. I mean, they fucking paralyzed him.
Black lung's on the rise, actually. It's for some reason. I don't know if it's because the younger generation's not wearing the respirators or what it is, but black lung is on the rise in last 10, 11 years, I guess, 12 years. And silicosis, and silicon from the dust and the sand, that's on the rise too. I had an uncle that died from black lung. He could not literally chew a bite of food without having to stop and take oxygen. That's how bad his lungs were.
The rates are even higher in Kentucky and West Virginia, where silica and quartz are more common and the majority of mines are non-union. Right, and you've worked with a number of people who have been afflicted with black lung and whose family members have died from black lung. And I think that's the kind of disease that when people hear it, they think, of back in 1900 with a guy with a pickaxe and, smudges on his cheeks. They don't necessarily realize that it's still a problem and people are still living with this disease. Could you talk a little bit about, I suppose, without not to put too fine a point on it, but the state of black lung in this country right now?
Right. There's concerns about increases in black lung over the last few years, I'd say the last 20 years, that have kind of increased with time. And there are various concerns about that, I guess theories about why that might be happening. Some of it's a question of whether or not more of the mechanization of the coal mining process is creating a finer dust particle that's getting into the miner's lungs. Other concerns about whether or not as easier to reach coal has been mined out in some areas, whether they're having to cut more rock when they're mining the coal. And the rock mine, the cutting of the rock is probably the larger problem for most of these guys. When you're getting into the silica dust that you're creating from the rock, that's probably 10 times worse for you from a respiratory standpoint than actually coal dust is. Not that either is good, but the silica dust is going to be much more harmful to your lungs.
The miners on strike at Warrior Met deal with this reality 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Some of them have been doing this for longer than I've been alive, and I'm sure some of them will still be doing it after I'm gone. It stands to reason that the corporations and executives who are profiting off these miners' labor should share some of that wealth, or at the very least, cover their healthcare costs.
Some strikes end early, some strikes end late. The thing that Warrior Met should come to grips with here is we're not going away, we're going to stay here, and we're going to fight for a decent contract. They could resolve this tomorrow if they wanted to. They can afford a decent contract.
That is exactly right. Like the Warrior Met company, the coal company, could just snap their fingers and say, hey, we'll pay these workers what they're asking for so that we can kind of get business clicking along. But the problem is these motherfuckers are so greedy that they want to juice these workers for all that they can, every possible bit that they can. Because they're still turning a profit. They'll still make tons of money. Like the Warrior Met, the workers that are at the mine are not like demanding every single like dime that Warrior Met makes. Like that's ridiculous. Now should they? Yes, but that they're not doing that. They're asking for very specific things, which can be very easily justified by the money that the company is making, and they're just saying no. They would rather give bonuses to their C-suite motherfucking executives.
We're not going away, we're going to stay here, and we're going to fight for a decent contract.
Do they lose effectiveness after they go on for this long? Not necessarily. It depends. I mean, support can build. There's a line: one day longer, one day stronger. Now, I mean, regardless of any of this stuff, the company is losing money because the workers are not in that coal mine right now. And, Warrior Met is essentially making a gamble here. They're gambling that this won't last. And the only way to beat them is to outlast Warrior Met to the point where they just fold. Because this is a fucking pitch battle. This is a knockdown, drag out fight. And if the Warrior Met company wins, that's a huge, devastating defeat for these workers if they go back for anything less than what they're asking for. Yeah.
They could resolve this tomorrow if they wanted to. They can afford a decent contract here. Certainly they can afford a better one than they offered up in the last round of negotiations. Being in a coal mine 12 hours a day is a whole lot different than being outside somewhere for 12 hours a day, because you're sucking up coal dust, you're working in dangerous conditions, and you don't ever get to see your families. Think about 12-hour shift underground. It took you an hour to get there. It took you an hour to go home. You got 10 hours left in the day by the time you get home. You're totally exhausted. You probably sleep 8 or 10 hours. That leaves you about an hour, 2 hours with your family. That's totally ridiculous in this day and age.
The true price of coal is etched in these workers' bodies, buried in their joints, dug into their muscles, and lurking in their lungs. Like generations of miners before them, they and their families have given everything they have to keep this industry and all who depend on it going. Now it's time for Warrior Met to pay its fair share.
Yeah. Well, a coal miner is a unique breed of people. We got You know, we look at that like we are brothers keepers. So if your brother's making a play, you play with them. You stand together. That's what you're supposed to do.
All right. That was good. That was a good video. That was Kim Kelly's reporting. It is called The True Price of Coal. You can check it out on the Real News Network's YouTube channel. I did want to move on to a couple other things. I'm going to go a bit longer today than usual. So hang tight. Don't go anywhere, folks. They did a 4-day work. I mean, I'm for 3.5 days on, 3.5 days off. We're going to have a work week. Make it even. We're moving on to Florida. Florida is now policing. The state of Florida is now policing faculty and students. They're going to be surveying them on their beliefs. They want to make sure they don't get none of that critical race theory in their schools or whatever the hell. But yeah, this is Governor Ron DeSantis suggested that budget cuts could be looming if universities and colleges are found to be, quote, indoctrinating students. Again, that's just like ridiculous language to, oh God, Caitlin Bennett's there. Fucking doo-doo Bennett. Oh my God. Okay. In his continued push against the, quote, dogs barking. In his continued work against the, quote, indoctrination of students, Governor Ron DeSantis on Tuesday night signed legislation that will require public universities and colleges to survey students, faculty, and staff about their beliefs and viewpoints to support, quote, intellectual diversity. I mean, it sounds to me what you're trying to eliminate is intellectual diversity, you dumb fuck. The survey will discern the context to which competing ideas and perspectives are presented in public universities and college, and seeks to find whether students, faculty, and staff feel free to express beliefs and viewpoints on campus and in the classroom. Oh my God, this is some like Uno reverse card shit. The measure, which goes into effect July 1st, does not specify what will be done with the survey results, but it's just like a scare you census. But DeSantis and Senator Ray Rodriguez, the sponsor of the bill, suggested on Tuesday that budget cuts could be looming if universities and colleges are found to be indoctrinating students. What does that mean? Like, education is necessarily like teaching a specific like course or a certain philosophy. You cannot remove these things from one another. Nobody would lie on the question to avoid the government spy on you. Yeah. I mean, like, there's nothing there, but essentially, like, there's a long process, and people are gonna like be very afraid of that in the meantime. And the governor can find ways to cut funding, and that's regardless of any of this shit. That's not worth tax dollars, and that's not something that we're going to be supporting moving forward, DeSantis said at a press conference in middle school at a middle school in Fort Myers. University faculty members have worried the new measure would create a, quote, chilling effect on their freedom of speech. Democratic lawmakers have also argued the bill might allow politicians to meddle in, monitor, and regulate speech on campus in the future. Yes. DeSantis, however, said the intent of the measure is to provide public universities and colleges from becoming, quote, hotbeds for stale ideology. Oh, yes. Vibrant thinker Ron DeSantis. COVID denying Ron DeSantis is right on that. It used to be taught that a university campus was a place where you'd be exposed to a lot of different ideas, DeSantis said. Unfortunately, now the norm is these are more intellectually repressive environments, which is just completely and utterly bullshit. You have orthodoxies that are promoted and other viewpoints are shunned or even suppressed. He's throwing meat to his base for the 2024 run. I mean, possibly. I don't know. Like that's probably what this is. Probably more than anything like that. Or it's just like a guy who's capitalizing on like, oh, we have to make sure we're doing scaremongering on things like critical race theory. I mean, they have schools, I mean, like not the schools themselves, but like, you know, parent groups or whatever out in Loudoun County in Virginia who are like intentionally getting arrested at school board meetings because they want to like make sure that their kids aren't being indoctrinated by critical race theory. We've covered on this fucking like this program ourselves, that parent or whatever who basically compared critical race theory to like Mao in China, which I said, you know, fucking sick. That's dope. But she basically said that like Mao tried to cancel the entire like history of China, which is just like an absolute you kiss your fingers sort of take. But like this is basically what this is. This is like finding ways to essentially use reverse language, reverse card language to fucking like trick you into thinking like, oh yes, actually diversity of thought is thinking of basically everything that we've always been taught since like the 1950s, you know, conservative view of history, great man view of history, all this fucking bullshit. You see the general tell Congress that he read Marx and Lenin while Gates shook his head. God, you got a link to that? Hit me a link to that. That would be actually. And like again, this is a fucking like general. This is like a warmonger. This is a motherfucker that like doesn't like. He's not like some lib or whatever, but like he's some general who's like, actually, we need to be teaching all kinds of actual things in school. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Oh my God. Mark Miley, the Joint Chiefs chair. Like this motherfucker right here. Like, not a good person by any stretch. Which actually makes me a little bit worried, actually. It actually kind of worries me a little bit, but let's take a look at this. This was wild. And by the way, the fact that this is all like happening in Congress rather than like again, Republicans are like pushing this and they're like standing in the way of things like the PRO Act, and they're standing in the way of things like the Power for the People Act, the one where they would expand voting rights and shit like that. Is this the one I just put up there? I think that's the one I just put up there. But here it is. Let's take a look at this weird shit.
Some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gates was talking, as well as
I
Mr.
want to hear
Waltz,
Matt
about
Gates
a similar
said. Hold
subject
on,
of
we
the
got to
stand
back
down
up.
and
We got to get to Matt Gates.
In my previous discussions with
Look at his fucking
service
dumb
members
head.
and particularly officers,
His head is so fucking huge. And his body is absolutely tiny. He's like Mr. Mackey from South Park.
I would hear about complaints over parts not arriving on time, long deployments, and in my more recent discussions with those officers, the number one issue that they raised to me with concern, often unable to speak publicly for fear of the type of retribution that Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer faced, they say that your stand down regarding extremism did not help our military, it hurt the military. And I want to share with you that perspective, that it caused service members to otherize one another. It impaired group cohesion. And interesting to me is that I've heard those sentiments most frequently from units that are majority minority, that this was not particularly helpful. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe share with us more specificity regarding the definitions that seem to be a challenge when Ms. Hartzler was asking questions.
So he's trying to tee it up so that like, I'm actually listening to black people. I'm listening to minority. Yeah, Florida's bad. Okay. I'm listening to people from different identities. I'm the woke one. I'm woke Matt Gates. You know, I always find it very funny when like when like conservatives try to do woke conservatism. That's always like very interesting to me. But that's what he's trying to do here.
How should the Department of Defense think about critical race theory?
Like woke racism, like that kind of shit.
Could I make a comment, Secretary? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm very limited on my time, General Milley.
Well, I just want to make a comment that the feedback
I know, but
I've gotten.
I've asked the question to Secretary Austin.
I don't know what the issue of critical race theory is and what the relevance here with the department. We do not teach critical race theory. We don't embrace critical race theory, and I think that's a spurious conversation. And so we are focused on extremist behaviors and not ideology, not people's thoughts, not people's.
Now, I will say this: like recently, a Navy. We talked about this yesterday. Actually, a Navy like training guide basically said that like he just talked about ideologies is not something that we teach or whatever. But they did have like this terrorist training guide and basically said that like socialism is just as dangerous as like fascism, or it's like a terrorist ideology. That's what it was. It was terrorist ideology, similar to fascism and shit like that. It's actually kind of crazy.
Political orientation, behaviors is what we're focused on. And one final point, and thanks for your anecdotal input, but I would say that I have gotten 10 times that amount of input, 50 times that amount of input on the other side that have said, hey, we're glad to have had the ability to have a conversation with ourselves and with
He's just like dunking on Matt Gaetz. That rules.
Our leadership. And that's what we need to make
and
sure
again,
that we
reclaiming
remain
my
a
time,
cohesive
Mr. Secretary, it may be that you're receiving that input in the ratios you describe because it was your directive. It may be that people are concerned about criticizing your decision because Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer was not relieved of his command for his actions. He was not relieved of his command because of poor performance.
Matt Gaetz's hair looks like it just came out of one of the fucking coal mines, by the way. Like his hair just like, it looks like it is like raw coal, just like wrapped on his, like smacked onto his head.
Regarding his duties, he was relieved of his command precisely because of his thoughts and because of his critique of critical race theory. It is particularly helpful that you have said that the Department of Defense does not embrace critical race theory and that you think the discussion is not appropriate. I would suggest that it is the ideology that is not appropriate, and it is particularly concerning to me that you have hired a critical race theorist to give you advice on personnel matters, and that person is Bishop Garrison. And I would particularly observe that on July 27th, 2019, Bishop Garrison tweeted regarding former President Trump, he's dragging a lot of bad actors out into the sunlight, normalizing their actions. And here's the relevant part. If you support the president, you support that. There is no room for nuance in this. There is no more, but I'm not like that talk. And then he replies to his own tweet with what seems to be a very ethno-nationalist hashtag Black44. Could you enlighten us as to what advice Mr. Garrison has given you? And are you concerned that while you testify publicly to our committee that the department doesn't embrace critical race theory, you have hired someone who is precisely a critical race theorist?
This is the first I've ever heard Mr. Garrison be described as a critical race theorist. So this is new. And, I'm sure
did you review his tweets before you hired him personally? Did you review his tweets before you hired him?
I did not personally review his tweets.
I would just ask that maybe that be helpful. Is there anything you can share in just these final seconds regarding any advice he's given you?
Let me just share one other thing that you brought up, Congressman, about the input that comes to me. You know, I trust my leadership from top to bottom.
Did you look at his tweets before you hired him? Oh my God, dude.
That they will
what
give
a fucking
me
weenie. Like, did you check his timeline? Oh my God.
Fair and balanced and unvarnished input. And for you to say that people are telling me what they want to what I want to hear, I get it. But I'm smart enough to know
that does happen.
Yeah.
It's so very strange too. These like conservatives or whatever, they're like trying to put forward the idea or like try and create this sort of narrative that the military has been compromised and it's becoming soft because of shit like critical race theory. It's really, really weird.
You know, maybe they're telling you what you want to hear.
Well, I don't know that they even know what I want
Gentleman's
to hear.
time has expired. Mr. Brown is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I know my time is very precious, but I would like to yield some of my time to General Milley because I know that he had some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gates was talking, as well as Mr. Waltz, about a similar subject of the stand down and race theory. Would you like a minute or so to comment on that? Do you remember what your line of questioning or thought was there?
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get
Look at all those ribbons this motherfucker's got. Like, oh my God. I fucking hate military people.
Harder on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding?
By the way, this is another like sort of important thing. Like one of the things that a lot of people like lefty types, and I'm not like against the idea of reading theory or whatever, but like the idea that obviously, I've read some, I'm not gonna like bullshit beat around the bush, but like the idea that it like necessarily is going to give you like a perfect analysis or whatever, or it's going to change the way that you think necessarily, like it can do that. However, like this guy read Marx, this guy read Mao, this guy read all this shit, and like he's still a fucking high level fucking warmonger in the United States. Like he's actually making a very good argument that like this indoctrination, like entire narrative is total and utter bullshit.
About the country for which we are here to defend. And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws.
Look at this little shit. Look at this little fucking weenie.
Our commissioned, non-commissioned officers of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But
whom amongst us has not become a war criminal after reading too much theory?
I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And I thank you for the opportunity to make a comment on that.
Thank you, General.
That was hilarious, though. That was pretty fucking hilarious. It is always nice to see fucking like that little fucking weenie shit get dunked on. Even if it is by like one of the worst people in like the United States, like one of the chief like people who are trying to figure out how to fucking like overturn the fucking newly elected Peruvian president. Like right this very moment. But yeah, it's very interesting to me. One last quickie story just for a yuck. Since that story started with Florida. Apparently that there was an assassination attempt. Florida Republican congressional candidate taken to court over alleged murder plot on their opponent. Let's take a look. right, we need sound, don't we? Usually works better when you have sound.
Taking the fight way beyond politics. She claims that he's stalking her and wants her dead. Now the case is before a judge. NBC News Now correspondent Maura Barrett joins us now with more details on this. Maura, tell us about this case and how it ended up in court.
Aaron, this started in court yesterday because Luna had filed an injunction.
Found a picture of this guy. That's what he looks like. Guilty. I don't need to hear anymore. Guilty. Look at this guy. 100%. He did it. He fucking did it.
For a permanent restraining order. She says she fears for her life and thinks Braddock is going to kill her. This is after she already has a temporary restraining order against him. And he says that he told the judge he opposes the injunction and wants to review the evidence against him. Now, Luna says that she received text messages from both Braddock and his associates saying that he wanted to, quote, take her out. And she says that she interpreted that and others saying that it means that he wants to kill her.
So, Maura, what do you know about what happens next in the course of the court proceedings here?
Right. So in court yesterday, Braddock didn't address the accusations. He says, quote, he didn't know what Luna has against him.
This is Republican on Republican violence. Here's a story from the AP. Claims by Republican congressional candidate that another GOP hopeful plotted to kill her landed Tuesday in a Florida courtroom. Anna Paulina Luna, who plans to run for Florida's District 13 seat after losing a race for the slot in 2020 to Democratic U.S. Representative Charlie Crist, former Republican, by the way, contends in court documents that GOP challenger William Braddock is stalking her and wants her dead. Luna's filed a petition for a permanent restraining order. I'm looking Pinellas County Circuit Judge Doneen Lohr. Doneen? That's a name I've never seen before. I had previously granted a temporary restraining order for Luna and conservative activist and her friend Erin Olszewski after the allegation surfaced. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. This would only fucking ever happen in Florida, okay? Good morning, Butter Hubter. This would only ever happen in Florida. This is the most Florida fucking story. Florida people. What the fuck, man? Like, quote, I do not feel safe and I'm currently in fear for my life for Mr. Braddock, Luna said in her petition. Luna's going to go down. Oh, this is what he says in a recording. The case took a darker and somewhat bizarre turn last week when Politico reported that Olszewski had secretly recorded a phone call with Braddock earlier this month, which he says the alleged Russian and Ukrainian hit squad could kill Luna within 24 hours. What? Luna's going to go down, and I hope it's by herself, Braddock said in the recording, according to Politico, which said it had obtained for the recording, quote, for the better or the good of humanity of the people, we've got to sacrifice a few. Holy shit. Describing the report, Braddock described the, quote, hit squad as being armed for, quote, close battle combat to make sure nothing was left to chance. No snipers, up close and personal, so they know the target was gone. Why the fuck would you say this? Like, is this guy joking? No, of course not. Like, oh my God. According to the Politico report, the online news site quoted Braddock as saying he hadn't heard the recording and that there was no proof it was him on it. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. Is it like, let me see. Let's look at the pictures. That's him. Actually in fucking court. Look at this. Look at this motherfucker though. He looks like a limp hot dog with glasses on. That's the judge. So fucking guilty. That suit is like 3 sizes too big for him, too. Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. He fucking did that shit. He fucking did that shit. You know he did. Jesus Christ. What else we got? What else we got? Why is John Cena trending? Oh, okay. He's going back to wrestling. Ooh, exciting. Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about John McAfee yet, did we? We didn't talk about John McAfee. R.I.P. to the real one. R.I.P. to a fucking weird one. Hold on 1 second. You know what? We can talk about him tomorrow because all right, never mind. I got this video.
Software pioneer and wanted fugitive John McAfee died by suicide in a Spanish prison cell on Wednesday after the country's high court authorized his extradition to the United States on charges of tax evasion and fraud. That's according to McAfee's lawyer, who said the software mogul died by hanging and could not stand any more time in jail, adding, quote, "This is the result of a cruel system that had no reason to keep this man in jail for so long." Known for his eccentric behavior and bizarre videos, the 75-year-old entrepreneur who...
Dude, look at this fucking dude. Like, he's actually kind of like amazing. First of all, his antivirus, the McAfee antivirus, is the worst antivirus. That's the first thing. 2, like, he went like absolutely off the fucking deep end. Where is he? Like look at him. He's like surrounded by women, like facing cocaine. Oh, I'm sorry, that's bath salts, not cocaine. He's got guns like all over his table. Like oh, what an absolute maniac, dude. What an absolute maniac. Where's the one I was looking for? I can't find it. I'll have to pull something up tomorrow. But yeah, what the fuck? He like on his way out, he decided, or like he basically did one of those things where he said that like the government, if he like died by suicide, it wasn't him, and he got like that tattooed onto his body. Let's look at his tweets. The U.S. believes I have hidden crypto. I wish, because he was in like he was in prison. He was about to be extradited from Spain for like tax evasion. But he always sort of like framed himself as this like truth and freedom fighter or whatever the fuck. It like was so bizarre. The U.S. believes I hid in crypto. I wish I did, but it has dissolved through the many hands of Team McAfee. Your belief is not required. And my remaining assets are all seized. My friends evaporated through fear of association. I have nothing, yet I regret nothing. So brave. So brave. Okay, here's one of his videos. I'll be right back.
Well, let's take a look at why does power corrupt? Well, let's take a look at the human species. Humans are compassionate and loving, gracious, kind, generous people. We are simultaneously greedy, jealous, envious, angry.
Just look at the angle that he's got the camera on. He's like staring down. He was on Pod Damn America? No shit. I didn't know that.
We're a mixed bag. And if you give one of the human species power, which part of ourselves uses it? Love? Love does not need power, people. It flowers from the heart. Grace? Grace certainly needs no power. Compassion, generosity. No, these are simply things that flow from our good nature. What uses power? Well, greed certainly needs power, doesn't it? If you have enough power, you can take any fucking thing you want. Anger. Oh, anger definitely would love some power, but would it not? Envy?
Like, this is the most libertarian thing I've ever heard in my entire life, right?
Well, with power, whatever you're envious of, you can duplicate on your own. No, it is that negative, unsocial, not life-supporting part of the human animal that needs power. Nothing else needs power. And so we give people power over others through government, through military.
Whoa, man. How high
And
is
we
he right now?
expect, them not to be corrupt.
He does talk like the Joker. He is the You're right. Oh shit, he is the fucking Joker. Oh my, you nailed it.
Wake up, people. Be very cautious who you give power to. Thank you.
Oh my god, I can't get enough. I gotta watch more McAfee videos now. My brain is like firing on all synapses. Oh, here he is playing. He composed this piece 5 years ago. This beautiful like artist who we've lost. The shirt all the way unbuttoned is just such a good look. All right, auteur.
Suggested that it's not really me tweeting on my Twitter account since I'm in prison. Most of you know my voice. For those that do not, my humor, which is obscure, certainly must shine through. In any case, it is actually me. But now the more important things. I love you all, and I miss being able to share
Love you too, buddy.
videos and photos with you. It is impossible for America to extradite me. I do believe this. The documentation they have, quote, discovered about me, they simply pulls out of their ass. And the Spanish people and Spanish courts are not stupid. So do not worry.
Oops. Yeah, they definitely were right about to extradite you before you decided to, kill yourself.
I may even get out on bail in a week or two. And if not, I will eventually be freed here. I do miss you all and wish that I could share fully with you. I love you. Keep up the fight against the madness and cancer that's been invading America.
Oh my god.
Goodbye, my friends.
All right. That's good. I don't want to go too far down the McAfee hole, but yeah. Look at this shit. Before we go, I just wanted to show one last little bit of Randy Weingarten cringe. This is pretty cringe. Goes back to our clip earlier of the general, and just, I don't know, something about Randy just always rubs me the wrong way. She's the president of my union, but like, this is like, she's just so incredibly enthusiastic about the fucking general. Like, wow, thank you, General Milley, for these impassioned words. And he's right. It's important that our leaders understand and learn about the country they serve and live in. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, that's just so, like, uncritical. I don't know. Randy's always been, like, a fan of Empire, and really the AFT has generally been kind of like on that. Not that like we should be anti union about it, but like that's just a certain amount of critical analysis that you should have of it. But good lord, like that is Pete Buttigieg level cringe, if you ask me. All right, folks, you can support Good Morning Comrade on patreon.com/Good Morning Comrade. I'm gonna get out of here. You can support the show just like Ty Jitty, Michael H, Dan O, Jonathan H, Timothy C, Dragonslayer 19, Andy L, Gary W, Rachel K, Kenneth F, Adam R, Trey M, Watermelon Pickle, and Penelope D. I will be back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Central Time. In the meantime, I love you all. For Twitch viewers, we are going to raid